This video is intended to address some of the problems associated with social media. The fact that I'm making this video is not to say that I'm personally against social media or that I think its cons outweigh its pros. I'm not making any sort of verdict like that, but I'm simply addressing some of the cons that are associated with social media, and that is the concern of this video. I think there are three most popular problems that are associated with social media. So firstly, of course, it's the addictive nature of the algorithm that makes you scroll continuously. Secondly, of course, data privacy is a serious concern. And thirdly, it's been shown to increase teenage depression because people tend to compare their lives to other people's better lives online. So I recognize that these three are very prominent and popular problems that are discussed, but I want to raise three different problems. So they're more niche areas of discussion that have not been touched in the mainstream, and that's why I think this video will be a bit different from most videos that discuss the problems with social media. So when I'm talking about social media, I'm mainly referring to platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, where they combine private messaging functions with public posting features. So in other words, they're platforms where you can easily access strangers as well as friends in real life. The first problem with social media is that it changes our expectations. So it has the ability to enable us to be constantly connected with other people. And this in turn changes the average person's expectations regarding the extent to which people are normally connected to each other. This change can have profound consequences for our attitudes towards solitude and interpersonal relationships. I think there are four most significant shifts in connectivity. Number one, we're constantly used to knowing what our friends are up to. Number two, we expect to almost always be digitally connected with some people, even though we may not be physically connected with them. Number three, a lack of social media presence can directly lead to a decline of one's presence in a physical social circle. And number four, people live with expectation of being able to constantly reach others easily, and in return they're also burdened by others' expectations of reaching them easily. And I think these phenomena have serious implications for our relationship with solitude. Firstly, any frequent social media user of this age would have lost the ability to deal with extended periods of just complete solitude. So it's a situation where you're not connected with anyone at all, whether it's physically or digitally. People rarely, if ever, have to go through these sorts of solitude in disconnect. Of course, I agree that too much solitude is bad for one's mental health, but I would argue that it is a psychological virtue or strength to be able to deal with a suitable level of solitude. It allows for more deep thinking and reflective calm and just more time to focus on yourself. That's why I think a lot of people, when they're going through difficult times or when they want to focus more on themselves, they tend to tune out of social media. This precisely testifies to the influence of social media on our well-being. Secondly, as connectivity expands, personal space diminishes drastically. I would say almost everyone would have had an experience of being demanded by someone else to text back within a set period of time or pick up a call whenever they call. Of course, this expectation of being constantly reachable is not something that's unique to social media. So back then, when we had only just mobile phones with only calling and texting functions, you could potentially do that to someone as well. But I would say social media makes it easier for people to impose such connectivity demands on other people for a few reasons. Firstly, it expands the number of channels via which one can be reached. Secondly, the proliferation of social media has created a sort of expectation among us, especially young people, that no one is off their phone for more than a few hours at a stretch unless they're doing something very important, like in a meeting or exam. So when you're not responding to texts or calls, people are much less likely to deduce that you're just not on your phone. They're actually more likely to take it as a reflection of your attitude towards their contacting you. Another often discussed idea, also trigger of teenage depression, is that social media makes us compare our ordinary lives with the highlights of other people's lives. While I think it is an issue, I think focusing on this side of the problem overshadows a deeper issue. And this deeper issue is the fact that we're not meant to know that much about other people's lives. Never in history have we been able to know about details of other people's lives constantly and in such extreme detail if that person chooses to overshare. We have never been faced with this transparency, and I think this transparency is problematic for a few reasons. Firstly, it creates a sort of anxiety. One wants to constantly know. One feels left behind when they cannot constantly know. And I think this isn't a normal state of life, just this avid desire to probe into the lives of other people. Of course, I know it's in human nature that we like to probe, but it's never been so normalized, like we have an expectation of being able to probe. And secondly, people who are not active on social media can be easily excluded from a lot of social events, friendship circles, and various opportunities. Thirdly, the great ease of knowing what people around you are up to can heighten your sense of loneliness when you're constantly bombarded with the fact that people are doing things without you. And I think this is such a teenage thing. Now, let us discuss the second problem. Whilst I was reading some academic papers on privacy, it suddenly clicked with me that social media would have a lot of serious philosophical and legal concerns regarding the area of privacy. Let me give you a very simple example to illustrate this problem. So I read a paper called "What is the Right to Privacy" by Andre Marmor. So his central thesis is to prove that we have a general right to privacy grounded in people's interest in having a reasonable measure of control over the ways in which they can present themselves and what is theirs to others. This proves to be a problem when social media comes into the picture. Okay, let's start with an assumption. So we all know that privacy is a right that we waive when we step into the public sphere, like when you walk into the streets. You obviously can't expect people to not stare at you like you would if you're in your house. So when I'm walking onto the streets, people can stare at me as much as they want, and the most I could accuse them is of being impolite. Not that they're invading my privacy, because I've thrown away that right by stepping onto the street. But now let's suppose someone takes a picture of me and then posts it on the internet. Potentially, an infinite amount of people can scrutinize my picture that's on the internet. Is this a violation of my privacy? So Marmor believes that this is a violation. This is because my assent to being viewed by people on the street relies on my assumptions about, the limited number of people that could simultaneously be on that street, their limited memory and attention span that could be directed towards what I do. In other words, I have only waived my right to privacy to this limited group of people under these specific conditions, and these conditions I'm aware of. I have not consented to being recorded and potentially exhibited to the entire world online. So what this case illustrates is that whenever we go into any sort of sphere classified as the public sphere, we are waiving our rights to privacy with regard to the terms and conditions of that public sphere in particular, and only that public sphere. For example, if I check in a room at a hotel, I consent to the room servers entering my room and cleaning it and potentially moving my stuff if they need to. But I do not consent to my neighbor walking into my room just randomly. So each public space has associated with it certain conditions of publicity. In most normal circumstances, when we enter that public sphere, just like our experience in life and common sense would tell us what aspects of privacy we're giving up on. So we clearly know what we're consenting towards. However, when social media platforms have come into birth, this situation changes. Let me just discuss two different cases. So suppose you have a social media account and your account is public. So in this case, anyone can potentially find you and view whatever you posted. So now, would you say you have waived your right of privacy to the entire world, or only to your followers or friends on that account? The line here is quite blurry because obviously there's no obstacle to the entire world viewing you. But when you're posting, you obviously have this normal viewing conditions in mind. You are expecting a fixed audience to view your posts. and that fixed audience are your friends and followers on that account. So there is a discrepancy between the level that you expect yourself to be sharing and the potential level that your information can be shared up to. Now let's consider case 2. You have a private account, and we all know how private accounts work on social media. Here the boundary seems a bit clearer, but let's consider what if someone screenshots your post and shares it on a more public platform. This is a bit different compared to when you're directly texting someone and that person screenshots and shares it. That is clearly a violation of your privacy and confidential information, but in this case, is it? Because your communication, even if it's a private account, is arguably quasi-public in nature because you're communicating to probably a lot of people. Posting privately does not necessarily give you a claim to privacy, because let's compare it to talking to your friends in public and you're talking very loudly. You're expecting to only be communicating to your friends, but potentially anyone walking by can overhear you. So it's this sort of line that's kind of blurry. Of course, I think laws and philosophies regarding privacy is very much expected to evolve alongside the evolution of different social media platforms, and they're likely to be giving more solid and helpful explanations of what is public versus private. But right now, I would say it is quite a messy area, both legally and philosophically. This third problem arises out of the fact that the online world is so different from the physical world. People can be anonymous, they can disappear whenever they want, and they can even foster more than one persona. All these point to one fact. In the online space, people are much less responsible for what they say. So in real life, let's say you insult someone. They obviously know who you are, they could continue to make your life very difficult, they can insult you back, they can even punch you back. You know that there are going to be repercussions if you insult someone in real life. However, in the online world, more likely than not, there are no repercussions. You can literally just disappear. You can abandon your account and make a new one. It is because of this lack of accountability, people tend to be much more irresponsible in what they say to strangers online compared to what they would say to someone they directly meet in real life. Moreover, this separation between the virtual and the physical enables the creation of fake personalities. And these fake personalities can be created in two senses. So in case 1, people can present themselves physically just as how they are, so they show their physical appearance, but they construct a persona, i.e. personality-wise or occupational-wise or educational-wise, in any sort of aspects, a persona that departs from the person they really are in real life. In more extreme cases, people can completely just not show their faces and adopt an entirely fake persona that has nothing to do with their real selves. Not only does this anonymity itself create room for irresponsible behavior, but it also carries a sort of psychological encouragement for irresponsible behavior. One would feel somewhat distanced from their online persona, and this is what kind of gives them the encouragement to act differently from who they are in real life, because this distance effect makes them feel like they're not really that person online. Moreover, social media enables a drastic overhaul of how we've traditionally interacted and known other people. So before, when you interact with someone, with the exception of pen pals or something, you would almost always know what that person is like physically in entirety, at least, even if they could lie about their address or their occupation. But now we are faced with various virtual relationships where we just know nothing that we can verify about that person. In other words, it has created this entire new sphere, a new potential to social interaction. One can potentially doubt the authenticity of what other people say to a much greater extent. And this new form of social interaction always contains much bigger blanks about the person you're interacting with compared to before. People tend to enjoy filling in the blanks for strangers that they find online, whether it's just this random stranger you're texting on a forum or an internet influencer. It creates room for both extreme idealizations and gross distortions of personalities. It's like we've never faced other people, celebrities excluding, with such big blanks in their personas that requires to be filled in via our own imagination. And because of this, it is no wonder that in the age of social media, people tend to judge others much more quickly based on piecemeal information, because they are so accustomed to filling in the blanks for another person via their own imagination, which I believe is also a form of very irresponsible behavior. These are the three aspects of social media that I have wanted to discuss in this video. I do not think I'm able to propose any, valid, viable solution to these problems because I use social media. I'm not free from some of the issues that I've raised in my own video. And I don't think there really is any way of completely solving these problems without drastically changing or destroying social media. Of course, I'm not to deny that social media has brought us various benefits, which is why I do enjoy it and I continue to use it. However, it does remain a question of whether the pros definitively outweigh the cons. Or maybe we could reform and amend the online space in a way such that the pros can potentially outweigh the cons in the long run. Thank you for watching this video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my video, and I will be interested to hearing any of your thoughts in the comments.